Do you love the idea of personal growth but find the practice of it exhausting?
We get it.
We're Brandon and Megan Giggling, growth coaches with the mission to put the personal back in personal growth.
If you want a new way of growing into the next version of you without the frustration, guilt, and overwhelm, you're in the right place.
It's time to rethink your growth journey and make it into something that works for you.
You in?
Welcome to Growth Reframed.
Hey friends, welcome to Growth Reframed. Whether you're joining us by watching us on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite place to get your audio podcast, we are so thankful you're here. Last week we talked all about being authentically you. We went into all the ways that we try to hide behind ourselves and what to do about that. So if you have not listened or watched that episode, we encourage you to go back and do so now. Today on the podcast, we are talking all about getting your kids all involved in personal growth.
I love it because we were just talking before we got on about we personal growth them. We got them. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. And I think the thing the context I want to give is I want to say that when we are talking about personal growth in them, we're talking about our personal growth, the way we do it at Growth Reframed, not a lot of the toxic tenets out there, because I don't want people to immediately be like, well, that's not healthy for your children. First of all, judge me if you want, but I will be authentically me, like I talked about last week. So sorry if it's not for you. I'm not for you, boo. Otherwise, we will get into the episode, and I am really excited to talk about this because there's been just a lot of things that have happened recently that we can talk about.
Yeah. I've been personal growthing the crap out of our children lately. And it wasn't even like I meant to. There's just been some situations lately that have come up where I'm just like, I've got this. Like, not only am I their mother, I am their personal growth coach, and I've got this down. I know exactly what to say in this moment. So
if people are looking for a coach, then you've already prepared, like with our kids, as your guinea pigs, right?
Yes, I'm all up in it. So just the other night, I took our daughter for a run, and again, you'll probably judge me for that. Whatever. She wants to do it, okay? And she is only 8 years old, and she wants to run a mile, so dang it, we're running the mile. So we go running for our mile. It's like the fourth time I've taken her. She's killing it, man. She started out at a 30-minute mile. Then she went and did, I want to say like a 13:30 mile. Like, she's gotten progressively better. So the other night we get our mile going. And she is, we're like 9 minutes into this mile. We're almost done, man. And she's like, I can't do it. And I say, sweet daughter of mine, you do not say that you can't do it. You can do it. And even if you can't do it yet, you are in the process of doing it. So we're going to stop talking like that. And I'm going to tell you right now, you can do it. And what I think we should do is when we get to this bush, we are going to run the rest of the way home so that you can prove to yourself that you can do it. I said, you know what? You grow most in the moments where you're uncomfortable and you don't think that you can do it, and you do it anyway. Dang it, I wish I had my do it anyway shirt on. That would have been great.
I have my tattoo.
Okay.
It's always on.
Okay, cool.
Awesome, we're covered.
So I was like, and then I proceeded to spend the next minute and a half. It took us 10:44, I think, is what we finished at. So really great improvement.
Beast mode.
Her PR for sure. So I know, she's great. So, I'm talking her through the whole thing. I'm like, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, all of these things, it doesn't even, just whatever you think that you can't do, you just push through it, because there are moments where you need to just prove to yourself that you can do the hard things. And I'm going all in. Like, I am personal growth and the absolute crap out of her, like I said. And it worked, y'all, because she ran that dang mile and she did not stop until we ran the mile. And I said, hey, we ran the mile. And she said, well, we didn't get to our driveway yet. And she kept going. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So that was one example of my personal growthing of our children.
Right, and it's come up a lot recently too, because I've tried to eradicate the word can't from our house. It's still a work in progress. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, you can't say that you can't, because you're teaching your brain that you can't do it, even though you can. And a lot of times you try to convince yourself, like, either your body or your mind will try to shut you down, and you just have to overpower that and show yourself that you can. And I gave the example of when I ran the half marathon. When I went running with our daughter, I ran the half marathon, and like very early on, my hip was going to die. And I was like, I can't do it. And I'm like, no, I'm going to, because I've done this run many a times, and I'm going to. The important thing, though, is, yeah, your personal growthing them to crap. But the important thing to remember as a parent, no matter what, is, are you modeling that? Because you can say it. And I know a lot of us are like, no, y'all, I'm not trying to ruffle feathers. You know I love y'all. So I'm just going to lean in and have this conversation with you.
Oh, geez.
But if you aren't modeling the behavior, whatever the behavior is, like if they can't see you doing it, then what do you think they're going to give it when you say, do it, but then you're not practicing it?
Right.
What did you do with your parents when that happened? What do you do with your bosses or coworkers when they talk about that? Do you take them seriously? No, you have to model the behavior. So I can't just say, well, you got to push through it and say you can't. And then 3 seconds later, I come home and I'm complaining to Meg in front of the kids about something at the office. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do that because blah, 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 and naming all the reasons. No, because then they're going to see that and that's what they're going to model. They're going to forget that 5-minute conversation you had with her on the run, or when you had that little quick conversation in the car, like, hey, let's be good. And make sure on the playground, you have patience with people. Did you just cut me off? Sorry, y'all, I didn't mean to freak you out. But then you're doing that 10 seconds later. Like, that is not instilling in them that that's what you should do. So make sure that whatever you're standing firm on, you're living that out yourself.
Right. Do as I say, not as I do is a fun thing to say when you're joking. It's really not the best way to teach your children about anything, let alone personal growth.
Yeah. Another thing is just to encourage, encouraging them to self-reflect. And one of the things that's come up a lot with our kids is, well, first of all, I've told so many people this recently. Our daughter is a carbon copy of Meg. And what I mean is she's a firstborn, type A, perfectionist. So when you see Meg and our daughter, knowing both of them, you see them argue with each other. It's like Meg is arguing with a mirror. It is truly something to see. And a lot of times I'll even jokingly say to you, like, do you hear what you're saying to yourself? Because I remember what you were saying earlier, and make sure.
Yep.
But I encourage, the point is, we encourage, because I know that about her, I encourage self-reflection. So when she starts to spiral, I use a lot of the same strategies I use with you to help, and you use them with me. It's not just me helping you, help
right.
each other. But it's like, okay, so think about this. You have done whatever this task is, how many times? Have you ever had these terrible things that you're saying are going to happen? Have you ever bombed that test? No, you have a 99 in that class. Okay, so remember that, because I always talk about with y'all and over on social media and wherever anyone will listen, that you have to speak truth into the situation. So you have to show them and teach them and kind of move them along on doing some self-reflection so they can start thinking through the process of what's actually going to happen and how is this really going to go and how has it happened for every other time, and that's how it's going to go. But you have to show them that they can work through it themselves because, like you said, you're instilling that you don't give up and that you're going to push through to that finish line, whatever the finish line is in their lives at the time. But then next time the hope would be that you don't have to be the voice, that the voice in their own head is reflecting on it and making those realizations by themselves. That's what I think our goal is.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you're parenting, whether you're coaching, whatever you're doing in your life, maybe you're a team leader, I think that's true. And right along with self-reflection, I think is to help our kids understand that learning is also a big part of this whole thing too. Learning is so important just on its own because, number one, you start off as an amateur. So we're all kind of in this boat, whatever the thing is, of not being an expert immediately. So we're kind of by default using that muscle to kind of personal growth ourselves up again. But also just for me, when I'm dealing with my own children, I'm thinking, okay, if they see me personal growthing, I know that's not a word. It's a word for me today. If they see me self-reflecting, and then that's kind of where it ends, they're not going to understand that there's more to it. If they see me take on new things that I'm not sure of, if they see me trying to learn new things, then they're also by default going to see me stumble and fall and flail around a bit. And that's good because it shows them that that's part of growth.
Yes.
That is part of the process. It's normal and natural to have doubts and to be not an expert and to struggle along the way a little bit. I'm not perfect while they seem to think that I'm a great mom, and I'm so thankful they do think that, you know, they put me on a pedestal because I'm their mother, and they put you on a pedestal because they're your father, that somehow we have all this stuff figured out. So when they get to pull back that curtain a little bit and see us flailing around, that's actually great for them, because they can then realize that, hey, if even my mom and dad, who I think have figured it out, have not actually figured everything out, then it must be okay for me too, to be learning and trying and ultimately failing sometimes.
Yeah, and I think you have to be open, and I get there's limits, by the way, before I say this. But you have to be open to being vulnerable with them. Because like you said, because this was, my parents didn't even like do this, but like when I looked at them, I was like, oh yeah, all adults have everything figured out. They certainly have it figured out. But then when you turn around and you're struggling and you think everyone around you has it figured out, much like your kids would, then that's really difficult. And then you don't really know what to do with it. And even more importantly, you don't know like how to bring it to your parent. They don't know how to bring something to you because they think you're going to like, regardless if you would or not, they're going to think you're going to judge them, or like, well, they think something's wrong with you because you didn't, like, how couldn't you have figured that out? And you're not instilling that environment that they're open to coming to you. And like you said, it takes vulnerability to say, like, you struggle. Like, I think about our kids ask, like, Daddy, you're not afraid of anything, are you? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And I talk about a few of my fears. I don't talk about my deepest, darkest fears and, you know, push them into therapy, but I do, you know, I am open with the fact that there are things I'm afraid of, that I do things every day that I'm afraid of. It comes up. But if I don't say that to them, then they're going to think that someday that they'll be like me and they won't be afraid of anything. And that's not a reality that they can have. But again, going back to your fostering a love of learning and educating, like when our kids, how we do this in real practice is if they ask about something, like our daughter just got through a whole bird project at school. So they were doing that at school, but then we took an interest at home. Like we got out a bird guide and looked. And when we saw birds, we went out and inspected them and we looked them up in the book to see, like, is that something? We'll ask she who's sitting right next to me, who cannot be named, that starts with an A, from Amazon, that a question if we have questions. And it's so easy to get information now, but you have to show them like that they should go out and seek that information, not just from another person, but they can educate themselves. Like a month ago, our daughter got into this whole book cycle, and we went to Barnes and Noble. I mean, I know that's a crazy idea to actually go to a bookstore, but we went to a bookstore and bought her a few books. I don't even know whether she's read them yet or not, but the point was we're showing her that it's important to invest in yourself. It's important to invest in things that you're interested in, and that it's okay. And so those are simple ways to bring that into the fold of what you're trying to do. But you have to remember that every time, because if you've had a long day at work or you've had a long day mothering or whatever, and they want to do that, I understand you can't do it every time, but you also can't say no every time. If there's things they want to do to explore that, you have to be open to showing them that it is okay for them to explore it. And sometimes that means a little bit of a sacrifice on your time because that's not what you had in mind for that moment.
Yeah, that providing that moment to them matters. And another thing I think that we've really tried to start focusing on is just being able to show them that it's not always about the result. It's just about the progress. Like so many times, the end result doesn't actually have any effect on anything, and it's the momentum and the progress that they're making. For instance, last night we took our kids to swim lessons, and our son he's 5 years old. He's in level 3 at swim, and he just cannot, bless his heart, graduate to level 4. He is trying his dang hardest. He is all in, but the one little thing that he has left to master before he can graduate up to the level 4, he just cannot do. And it breaks his poor little heart every class. So last night before swim, he starts getting down on himself again. And, you know, I have to, again, personal growth him because he needs that message. And I say, you know, I talk about Silencio Bruno because I feel like that's a thing that he can understand because we're Luca fans in this house and he watches Luca. So he, you know, in theory, should understand the Silencio Bruno. So I tried my hardest. He was like, Mom, that's not a real thing. And I was like, well, I mean, yours might not be called Bruno. You know, you might have to say like, shut up Maverick's brain, because he likes to be able to, you know, swear in his mind by saying shut up. That's a big swear word in our house. So So shut up is like a big deal. So I was like, well, you might have to say shut up, Maverick's brain. Because if Silencio Bruno doesn't mean anything to you, then maybe that's what you say. He got a chuckle out of that, but he still was having a little bit of a hard time. So then I had to switch tactics to tell him, like, you know what, though? You are working so hard. And just because you haven't made it to level 4 yet does not mean that you're not doing a great job. You are learning and growing all the time. This is major for you. Like, you started out, you didn't know how to swim. Like, you couldn't even get in the water without being a little bit freaked out. You cried. So we don't always have to focus on the fact that you're not yet in level 4 and you just can't get this one little thing down, because there's so many things that you have accomplished in your swim lessons. So many things.
Right.
Like, let's be proud of that.
Right. I mean, they even say it in our son's kindergarten class. This teacher says this, like, practice makes progress. They stop saying practice makes perfection, because there's no such thing as perfection, but there is a such thing as progress. But you have to show them that progress. You have to show them what it means. And sometimes, I know I have to even do it for myself, but you have to do it for your kids. You have to show them that where their brain is, where they're at right now, is not where they were. And even if it is, like, they still have identified what the problems are, and they're going to work towards fixing them. Even more importantly, too, is just celebrating that progress when it happens. Because, yeah, you can say, well, you know, it's progress and whatever. But, like, I don't know if you guys have ever done this with your kids. You got to make, like, a big deal about things that are not that big a deal. And I don't mean to even discount it. Like, kids, you know what I mean. The things they're doing, the accomplishment might not be the biggest accomplishment. Like, I remember when we were teaching our kids to go to the bathroom and they peed in the toilet, and we're like, yay!
You're the best.
Job.
I'm so proud of you.
Nobody's done that better than you. You pee into that hole in the wall. You know, it's silly, but you need to do that.
Right.
I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I need a little pick-me-up. I need someone to come beside me and champion me a little bit and be like, no, you are the shiz. You got this. You know, Meg does it to me all the time. It's not even about whether I need it or not. It just kind of feels good sometimes. But celebrating those things, and it doesn't need to be a big celebration. Maybe you can take them out for ice cream because they did. Maybe you can get them a small little toy. Maybe you can just, like, spend individual time with them, talking to them about how you're proud of them.
Right. Our kids love praise. Our kids actually thrive on praise. Like, if we don't say good job, sometimes they'll call us out on me like, well, don't you think I did a good job? Like, don't you know? Don't you care? Didn't you see? We're like, yes, we did. We're so incredibly proud. And I'm sorry that I'm a terrible parent by missing that for 1 second while I was doing something else. And I would have come back to that. But yes, I am very proud of you. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just being there to celebrate with them, being there to acknowledge them, being there to say, I see you. And what you're doing makes an impact, and I'm proud of you. Like, all of those things matter, especially if you have a child who responds well to verbal praise and recognition. That can be one of the most effective tools for teaching them how to navigate this world, is just by not so much punishing when things don't go right, but just instead just celebrating when they do, and showing them, like, hey, this strategy worked for you in this case. I think you could repeat this in other areas too, and it would work the same, even though it's not the same situation. I think that once they understand how that works, and getting that praise, getting that reinforcement matters to them.
Well, and really you're instilling what means something to you too throughout the process. That's the thing. Coming back to practicing it yourself. You have to instill the values and things that you believe. So if any of these things are things you don't believe, then don't try to instill them on your kids, because it's not going to work. It has to be something that you believe in and that you want to do. If you're anything like me, while you're doing that to your kids, sounds terrible. How are you doing that to your kids? While you're educating your kids and trying to instill these positive values to them, it makes me look in the mirror, because I'm like, down to the studs, like a dumbed down version of this, of what I was dealing with at the office yesterday. If I take that down to the most minuscule form, it's almost exactly like what my daughter's dealing with at school today with their homework. And it makes me reflect and makes me better by making them better, if that makes sense. Like, I am educating myself, and I'm making myself see life through their eyes, which helps me, by the way, connect with them better too, because it's hard as an adult. Life is so hard. And a lot of times I think my kids should just know that. And like the stuff, like you can judge me again later, but it's like, I'm like, that's not a big deal. Like, what are we even talking about? But when you can see life through their eyes and you can hear the advice you're giving them and then spit it back to yourself in the mirror, sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow. Like I said, you and our daughter are like literally talking to each other. It's like, did you hear what you said there? But I have to do it too.
Right.
So again, there's simple things that you can instill in them, but I caution that part of it. If you don't believe in it, if you don't value it, it'll show through so obviously to your kids. They are way smarter than you give them credit for. They're way more resilient, by the way, than we give them credit for. They'll see right through it. So be honest about where you're at. Be honest to a point and be vulnerable. Be willing to do that. And then instill the values that you find most important for you, that you know that you can personally live by. Right. And that's what's going to make the biggest impact with them. Right. Not all this other fake things or things because someone told you somewhere in a book that you should do it or you think you should do it or this is how your friend does it or this is how their teacher does it. That's not the most important thing. Again, go back to our episode last week. Being authentically you as a parent is the most important thing, and connecting with your kids on a real level.
Yeah, we are personal growthing them our own way. So your way is going to be totally different. Maybe you don't believe you should personal growth them at all, and maybe this episode you're like, they are crazy people. Whatever, that's your prerogative. Go ahead. But all I'm saying is you have to do 100% what you believe in. And for us, we are going to personal growth our kids in the way we see fit, which is not, by the way, by the book of all the personal growth gurus out there who say this and that. We kind of have our own spin on it, and that's exactly how we're teaching them. So you do you, and we'll do us. We will meet you back here next week.
Love y'all.
Thanks for listening to Growth Reframed. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. We would love to connect with you, so shoot us a DM on Instagram @GrowthReframed. We love y'all.